Today, I'm going to show you how to create a pivot table in Excel and demonstrate some of its basic functions. A pivot table is a tool within Excel to help summarize large data sets efficiently. To start, I've created this data set of income and costs for the fictional dog walking company, Walking with Love. I split up the data into several categories, including periods, corresponding to each month of the year, the description of the debit, which is the money coming into the company, and the credits, money leaving the company. I then also added a category called net, which is the difference between our debits and credits. In order to create a pivot table, you'll first need to select your data set that you would like to turn into a pivot table. So, I'm going to click in the top left corner of my data set, ensuring that I've selected all of the subheadings for my data, and select the data. Next, I'm going to hit the Insert tab on the toolbar of Excel, and then select Pivot Table. You can select the caret in order to select data from a table or a range as shown below, or from an external data source. For this presentation, I'm going to select from a table or range in my Excel sheet. As you can see from this bar here, this selected data corresponds to the data that's on our Excel spreadsheet. You can either create the pivot table in a new tab by selecting New Sheet, or in a cell on the current tab by selecting Existing Sheet, followed by cell on the current tab. As you can see, the location shown here corresponds to the cell selected on the Excel spreadsheet. This would be where the pivot table would appear. For my presentation, I'm going to create my pivot table on a new worksheet. So I'm going to hit New Worksheet and select OK. You can see on the left where the pivot table is located. On the right are the different subcategories for my data set. You can drag and drop these categories to make up the rows and columns of the data set. For example, I'm going to drag and drop the year into the rows section. You can now see each year from the data set represented as a row on our pivot table. You can also visualize information about the sum of data sets. For example, if you wanted to see the net profit or loss for an individual year, you can drag net into the sum values box. And you can see now that this profit or loss from each year of our data set is now represented in our pivot table. You can further subcategorize the data sets by incorporating multiple categories into the pivot table. For example, if you wanted to see the descriptions for the debits and credits in an individual year, you can drag description and place it in rows below the year, and you can see the description of the debits and credits for each individual year, as well as the net profit or loss from those debits and credits. This concludes my small introduction into pivot tables. There are a lot more ways to customize and utilize pivot tables, but I hope you can see the value of learning the basic functions of the pivot table to summarize data sets. Thank you for watching.